Hi, this is Josh with Retro TV 1 Tech, and today we're finally going to find out if my Commodore 64 is working again. I'm so excited to find out, and I hope you enjoyed the video. As you might remember, if you've been following the channel for a while, I got a Commodore 64 that looked mostly unused, or at least had very little wear and tear on it, on eBay from a seller who claimed that the system worked. However, if you watch my first video on it, you'll see that the system did not work at all. And I tried several different steps to get that to work, but it didn't work. I tried another video, a couple more steps to get it to work, and finally I sent it off to a friend when I realized that this was above my level of expertise on Commodore 64s. I sent it to a friend named Dan, who identified the problem and was able to get it to work. And so this will be my first time checking it to see if it survived the trip with the shipping, to see if it now still works at my house. I'm going to hook it up. Super excited to see if it works, and I can't wait to get started. So before we try this thing, I want to just give you a brief recap of what I tried, starting from the very first attempts. You can see here, when I first tried to turn it on, I thought it was on the wrong RF channel, and so I started switching around and was getting some different results. But eventually, I came back and realized that no matter what I did, no matter which cables I tried, I was just getting a black screen like this you see right here. And so the system was on, the power light was on, but there was nothing on the screen at all. So I tried several different cables and several different adapters just to see if one of those would produce different results and would allow me to show a picture on the screen. I tried RF modules like this, I tried composite cables, all kinds of different things, and every time I tried something it just ended up with a black screen. So I did some research and realized that the PLA chip is a common point of failure on these old systems, so I got a modern replacement of a PLA chip and tried that in the system. So after removing the PLA chip and getting that all taken out of there, that was an adventure because I hadn't really removed a lot of chips before, but after getting that out of the system and replacing it with the new PLA chip, I discovered that unfortunately I was getting this random flashing test pattern on the dead test cartridge, which indicated a bad RAM chip. But I didn't want to mess with RAM chips right away. I was looking, at the different things online to see which RAM chip could have been bad, but I wanted to try a few more things before I mess with RAM. So next I tried removing the SID chip and trying to boot the system without a SID chip, but unfortunately all that did was to produce a black screen again, and the dead test cartridge didn't even work with the SID chip out. And the last thing I tried was that I read you could boot the system without the CIA chips, and so if one of the CIA chips up here in the top left corner was bad, removing them should allow the system to boot, even though I wouldn't be able to do very much with it because all the things controlled by the CIA chip of course wouldn't work. So I worked on removing the CIA chips, which was a huge challenge because they were so big and I need a chip puller. But once I got those out, I realized that unfortunately there was no change and it was just a black screen on the system again. So at that point I decided to contact Dan and see if he could figure out how to fix the system, because I knew if the RAM chips really were bad, that wasn't something I was comfortable doing on my own. So before we talk about what was actually wrong with the system and what Dan was able to do to fix it, I want to try out this awesome machine and have it working for the first time that I've ever seen. I can't wait. Let's do it. Alright, here we go, the moment of truth. And you can see before we do turn it on that it is the same computer that I showed in the previous videos with the mustard colored keys, one of the earlier models of the C64, and I am just super excited to see if it works. And apologize for the mess on the shelves back there, but a lot of fun stuff back there anyway. So, alright. So I've got the power supply plugged in. I've got a C64 PSU, a modern power supply to make sure that it's safe and no over voltages or anything like that. But we're going to turn on the monitor first, and I do have a real Commodore 1702 monitor. So thanks to Jody and her kind donation. But without any further ado, let's turn this thing on and see if it works. Here we go. There it is, yay! All right. Let me adjust the contrast on the video so you can see it a little better. Alright, so there you go. It is actually working. You can see the picture is not the greatest right now. I think it's the cord that I'm using. But everything is working. Oh my goodness. Sorry, I hit the wrong button there. But there we go. Yep, all good. So if we do 10 print, Gotta get used to this keyboard again. It's been a while since I've actually typed on one of these again. Hello world. Why not? Alright, let's print 20. Print Retro TV1 Tech. 30. Go to 10. There we go. Yay. Alright. So as you can see, it is working. Hit run stop there. I'm going to try a different cable. I actually have a more modern, newer cable. I just wasn't sure exactly how it worked because it's actually got 4 inputs on it. It's a Commodore AV cable, and as you can see here, if I put it in front of the camera, you can see it's got 4 different outputs, so I wasn't sure which ones to use. So I'll try that here real quick, and maybe I'll get a little cleaner picture. Aha, there we go. Look at that. I know there's a little moire pattern on the screen from the camera, but that is just about perfect. So I'm using this older cable over here. Let me back out just a little bit so you can see that. So this is an older cable that Jody's husband Jeff had in his collection, but it's way better than those other 2 cables. So even a brand new cable that I bought off eBay, of all places, go figure, was not very good. But there we go. That's a pretty good angle on that. You can see a little refresh line every once in a while. But anyway. So much clearer. Oh my goodness. So these monitors, when they have the Luma and Chroma together, which is the black and white and the color together, get such a clean signal. And this system has very clean video on it. Look at that. Super, super clean. That is so awesome. Wow. I am super excited. After all that work and all that stuff that I did, and then that Dan did finally to clean up whatever I had done. Actually, he didn't have to clean up very much, but basically just to fix what I couldn't figure out. So excited to have this beautiful system working again. And here's another look at it. I'm going to plug in this cartridge to basically SD to IEC type adapter with a fast load on it to get some games loaded up. We'll try some games, and then we'll show you exactly what Dan did to make this thing work. Alright, as you can see, I have the fast load SD to IEC cartridge installed here. There's some instructions there just in case I forget how to load all the menus, and we are going to get this started. Turn on the machine. Boy, it turns right on now that it's been on a couple times. Let me get this adjusted so we get the cleanest picture possible here. It's hard to get it just right, but there. Okay, you just have to get it at just the right angle for it to work. But now you can see fast load, which means we've got the fast load cartridge in there. And we're going to load $, which is basically loading the first, I believe this is loading the directory basically. And we're going to say "8" because it's the in the "8" slot for the drive that we're talking about. Whoops. Try it again. There we go. All right, cool. So that shows some of the programs in there, different things you can do, but I'm going to actually load the menu manager, basically the disk manager where you can load programs from. You can also load programs directly, but it's a little easier using this FB64 program. So we're going to load that. We're going to load "8." There we go. And we're going to run, not rum. That's what Jack Sparrow was looking for. There it goes. All right, so it takes me a little bit to get used to how this menu works, but I'll find a program and we'll see what we want to play here. We may do Commando again one more time just for fun, and then I want to try maybe Gianna Sisters or something like that. This takes a second because there's a lot of files in here. So we're going to look in the C64 PRG directory because I think those are the easiest to load. There we go. Turn the exposure down just a little bit. Might make it easier to see for you guys to see what's on the screen here. Takes a while to load because a lot of stuff on this SD card, and this is another one Jody's husband Jeff had set up, so I didn't even have to copy everything over. Now I don't know, because the file names are limited, which one's which, but I think I just go with the first one. And I do have, if I can get it in front of the screen for a second, I do have an Atari joystick. You can't really see it there, but if I pull up the exposure you can. I do have an Atari joystick here that I'm going to use to play these games. So let me go back to the correct exposure there. All right, so there we go. Let's try this. Loading. Can't get over how clear the video is. And it sounds great too. The new SID chip sounds amazing. So let's just play just a little bit. I'm probably not going to be very good right now, but I know I did this in the last video with the C64. But it sounds great, looks great. It's a hard game. Just kind of have to go for it. Oh, see, I already died. I think that's like, with modern games, like one of the best things to do is just to, you know, try and defeat most of the enemies. But in these older games, it's kind of better to just keep going sometimes. Anyway, you get the point. Alright, obviously I'm not as good today as I was at that one, but let's try something else. Alright, we're going to see if we can load Great Gianna Sisters here. I'm hoping Great G is that. This little menu system is cool. Of course, due to the C64's file system limitations, it won't show more than a few characters, but still pretty cool. Let's see what it does here. Do I want unlimited time? Sure, why not? This is Super Mario Brothers. Oh, okay, cool. Well, let's see. We definitely want unlimited lives. All right. Let's see what happens. That's funny. Well, let's try it, see what happens. Oh, wow. That's pretty good. Okay, so I have to... This basically looks like Great Gianna Sisters. Same music or similar music? Yes, okay. It's kind of like a Great Gianna Sisters rethemed into Super Mario Brothers, but this is pretty cool. This would have been pretty amazing at the time on the C64. I think a lot of people didn't know that that could be done on a C64. And actually, I've never played this game with an Atari joystick, but the mechanics are a little different. The physics are a little off, but like Mario floats a little bit more, but this is pretty cool. Ooh, that's definitely harder than the original game. Okay. Hey, that's different, but that works. That's pretty cool. Let me pull down the exposure a little bit more, so I can keep myself from getting rocked here. I wish you could see how clear it is on the real machine here, because it's just so crisp and clear. And you don't always get that with some of these older systems. The video chips are not always this clear. I thought the video chip was bad a minute ago when I played this. And then I plugged in a better cord, even though it was an older cord. And it worked. This Atari joystick's working pretty good for this too. Oh, double lightning. Does that mean double fireballs? I don't know. That's pretty cool. So this is like not really like Mario, but it is more similar to Great Gianna Sisters, but this is definitely Mario. And there I go. Oh, that's kind of cool. Loading screen here for this one. There we go. Look at that. Scrolling is really pretty smooth on a system that didn't actually support smooth scrolling, I believe. Maybe it did. Correct me if I'm wrong, but wow. No, I guess it did, but anyway. There just weren't a lot of games like this on here. It's pretty cool. So this is the actual game. You can see the resemblance. You can also very quickly see the resemblance to Mario. Be interesting. I'd have to look up the history. I don't know if they got sued by Nintendo for this or not. So that Mario was just basically like Mario, but... Okay, it's just Mario as the character, but the game was just the Great Gianna Sisters game. It's a fun little game. Again, very similar to Mario. Cool. Alright, let's try something else. Alright, so this says Frogger93, so we're going to try this and see how this works. I don't know. I don't know if this is a newer version of the game or not. By the way, I did a little research too and found out that the C64 actually doesn't have scrolling. And some earlier games used a bug in the C64's display registers to get smooth scrolling to work. There we go. Well, there's one done here. It's a pretty good version of this. Pretty good graphics. I'm not sure if this is the original version or not, but either way. Ooh, those disappear. That's no fun. Super awesome. Alright, we're going to try a classic impossible mission.
Another visitor. Stay a while. Stay forever.
So, that voice there on that was pretty groundbreaking at the time. There weren't a lot of games that featured talking on there. Ghostbusters did too, but C64 was one of the first systems to have that. Yeah. This is cool. Temporarily. Oh, we gotta have the password. That's right. Oh well. Anyway, it's a fun little game. I don't know much about it. Or how to win. I do know how to die. Can do that. There's one. I guess you're getting another choice. You need to get another chance on that one. Oops. That's fun. Alright, so I've got it opened up here and I wanted to show you some of the things Dan did to get this beautiful computer fixed and working. So first of all, you can see from previous videos, and I showed you this earlier, what I did. I added this aftermarket new version of the PLA, and that wasn't the problem, but we went ahead and left that in because it's more modern component, so it's probably more reliable than the original. I still do have the original one just in case, but do have that modern PLA in there. But then one of the problems Dan found, and you can see here I alluded to this earlier, is that the SID chip was bad, which is weird because I actually did try it without the SID chip and it's supposed to boot without that, but the SID chip wasn't the only problem, and you can probably already see it if you know these boards very well, but the SID chip was replaced with an ARM SID, which is pretty cool and works really well and sounds amazing. So you can find those by searching Google, and we'll put a link in the description, but really sounds just like the real thing. I know Adrian Black and a few others have done comparisons between the original SID chip and this modern replacement. And then you can see here, of course, this is an aftermarket part here. This is the kernel ROM chip, and it is a new version of that because the kernel ROM was bad and was no longer working, and so it wasn't able to load the operating system, which on the C64 is basically called the kernel. So anyway, so that's why with the SID chip and with the kernel ROM being bad, the system would not boot previously. So, but I can go through here in just a second all of the diagnostic testing, all the things Dan went through to get that to work. But I wanted to show you on the actual machine what he did. Originally, we thought that one of the RAM chips was bad, but when he started swapping out chips with the working C64, he determined that it was the kernel ROM and the SID chip that were bad. And then, like I said, I just kept the PLA, the modern PLA in there because why not have a modern part in there? But anyway, it's a very clean board. And it was clean to begin with, but of course Dan cleaned it up even more. He also recapped it, by the way. So all the capacitors you can see on there are brand new and looking beautiful. So this thing should be good to go for a very long time. And I'll put a link in the description to the recapping kit that he got. If you're not familiar, capacitors are all of these little gadgets that kind of look like batteries on here, and they basically control the flow of power on the board to make sure that everything is flowing the way it's supposed to, and I won't get too far in depth on that. Basically, these capacitors do have a type of fluid in them, and they do fail after a while when that fluid dries out. They're basically no longer capable of doing their job, and so then the whole system could possibly fail because of a bad capacitor, or worst case scenario, could actually burn something out or fry one of the chips with a bad capacitor as well if it's sending out too much power or not enough, or power in burst or something like that. So one of the things that a lot of people talk about, and this system it looks like was made in 1983, is to get new capacitors for your system, or recap the system as it's called. And Dan had already done that, had experience with it, so he was happy to do that for me. And now we have a very, very clean, very nice example of a C64. So I'm going to put this back together, and then I will show you some pictures that Dan took as he was working on the machine, and a little bit better explanation of what he did. All right, I'm going to do one more test now that this thing is put back together, just to make sure that I didn't mess anything up when I took it apart. And nope, we are all good. Awesome. All right, so I just showed you inside the machine what Dan did to get it fixed, but here is his website, and it's dansdigitalarchaeology.blogspot.com, so definitely make sure you go check that out to see some of the other awesome articles he's got up here. But this is the one he did about my particular computer repair here, and he talks about how I wasn't able to get the system working, and he even has a link to my video that I have where I tried to repair it. But here's a picture of the system, very clean when it arrived to him. Looks like the RF shield had some corrosion on it, which Dan was able to clean, and the inside of the unit was also very clean. He mentioned I swapped the PLA chip with a modern replacement because that's a common point of failure. So that obviously didn't work, as you saw earlier on the little recap of my first video. And so then he unsoldered the lower shield to get a look at the back of the board, which looked very clean and had no obvious evidence of prior repairs. So here you can see, looking at the board, went ahead and zoomed in a little bit more there so you can see just a little bit better. So he said there was no evidence of prior repairs at all, so that's good. And that would be like any kind of bad soldering, or any kind of solder, bridges or anything really that would just look like the system had been tampered with or worked with in any way, shape, or form. So when he powered the unit on with the dead test cartridge, it flashed the screen with a code that indicated a bad RAM chip, which I mentioned before. And that was kind of what happened when I used the dead test cartridge on my previous video. But RAM chips are soldered in, so that's not an easy thing to check, because you've got to desolder each RAM chip as you're checking it. So he wanted to rule everything else out before replacing the RAM chips. So he started by swapping the PLA and the SID with the known good unit from his working machine. He also tried swapping in the original PLA, and he was getting very strange results during the process, and he eventually figured out what he was doing wrong. You can see a picture of my system with the PLA, and you can see that is the on the top there is the replacement PLA. It's got two chips in, one on a little daughter board, and then the SID chip. That's where my PLA and my SID are. But remember, I have an older revision. 1983 is the copyright on mine. But Dan's is a little bit different. His SID chip was on the top, and you can see his was from 1984. So the positions are completely reversed. The chips have the same number of pins, so he was able to put them in the wrong socket. Luckily, that didn't cause any voltage issues or anything to burn up, so that was good. But luckily, it was just caused some strange results on that. So anyway, then he figured that out, and he was able to determine that my C64 had a bad SID chip, and the replacement PLAs were fine, which was good. Whatever was wrong with the SID was appearing as a RAM failure, which is really kind of strange, but he did have a spare SID chip in the collection. So anyway, he put that one in and got the dead test cartridge working, but even though this SID allowed the system to work, he was getting really, really bad sound out of it. So we did order an ARM SID, and he contacted me, and we decided to order the ARM SID because it had been one of the best modern replacements of a SID chip that you can find. I thought about ordering an original SID chip from somebody online. You can find them that come out of dead systems, but they're supposedly working chips. But I thought, no, let's just order the new replacement so I know that it works. And it does have a really nice sound to it, as Dan mentions here. And then the next step was to remove the dead test cartridge and boot the system normally. But when he did this, he just got a black screen, which is what I was getting before. So even though he did get the dead test to work, he was still getting the black screen like I did before. And he did a little research and found out that the bad kernel ROM is the most common cause. So I hadn't seen that in my research, so I'm glad he found that. So he then was able to swap that with the one in his system. So he swapped the kernel ROM with a known working system into mine, and then that did allow the system to boot. And so he didn't have any video of that, just pictures here. The C64 ROMs have a different pinout than standard EEPROM, so he is an EEPROM programmer, which is basically a piece of equipment that does allow programming of ROMs. And so he tried to build an EEPROM adapter, and here is a pretty cool picture of his build process. There you can see he's got one of the chips there, and he's working on soldering some wires to it to get it to work. And so then you see here the result of that, soldering some of those pins together. So I don't know exactly how that works. Dan is definitely a lot more experienced with that than I am, but it's pretty cool that he was able to put some wires in there to get those to work. And this was just for testing. So this was an adapter, but he asked me what I wanted to do, and I said, well, yeah, it was like 10 or 15 bucks to get a modern replacement for the kernel ROM, and so that would be more reliable, so you don't have extra wires and things. But the good news is he was able to program a kernel ROM and get it working, so that was kind of cool. But with all these problems worked out, the final step was to replace the electrolytic capacitors in the system. And here's a great site for cap kits. I'll put this in the description as well. They provide the kits and the good instructions on how to replace them, so it's console5.com. So definitely check that out if you need to replace capacitors on your C64. And you can look at the version of the board. You can see mine is 250407, and that actually was listed. If I go back up here real quick, if you look at my board here, you can see that's listed right there, 250407. So that's assembly number, ASSY number 250407. So that's how you find that on your board. And so we have quite a few electrolytic caps that need to be replaced. Obviously, there are the old ones there. And he says the replacements are not identical to the originals, so that's something important to note. But there you can see the original ones. I just don't think these were used very much, but obviously that doesn't matter at this point. It's just the age of the components that's really the problem. They do dry out after a while because there is basically a liquid type of a substance in there that helps the capacitors to perform their function. But unfortunately that does dry out. So even though the system didn't look like it was used much, these still needed to be replaced, and really grateful for Dan for doing that. So yes, I am now doing the video to show the repaired system, but once he got all that put together, then I showed you just a few minutes ago the result of what it looked like when everything was put back together. All the new capacitors were in there, and everything was looking really spiffy and ready to go. So really appreciative of Dan for doing this, and definitely check out the rest of his website and his blog. I can go over here and show you just a little bit. This is the top of it, Dan's Digital Archaeology. So definitely check that out and give him a follow on there, and leave a comment on there and let him know how great of a job he did getting this fixed. I'm super excited to have this system working again. All right, everybody. Well, that's all for now for this Commodore 64 repair wrap-up video. I'm so excited the system's working. Again, a huge thank you to Dan for his time and effort in getting the system repaired. Really, he gave of his time, didn't want anything for the repairs. All I had to do just was pay for the parts for the system, and you know, he just enjoys doing this, and I really appreciate him taking his time to do that. One of the things I learned, you know, as a band director, this is my normal job is a band director, and when we did instrument repair classes, you know, I can do a lot to repair instruments, but one of the most important things you can learn, and this is something I learned in those classes, was when to stop and let somebody else more experienced handle the repairs, because sometimes you'll end up doing more damage, whether it be to an instrument or to an old computer system or even a modern computer system, if you get in over your head and do something that you're not completely knowledgeable about doing. So I got to that point with the system where I had troubleshooted as much as I could. You know, I wasn't doing the greatest pulling chips out, so I need some practice with that and things like that. But it was really a learning experience for me, and luckily, you know, I knew Dan and knew his experience with Commodore 64s and several other retro systems, and he was more than happy to take on the project. And like I said, he has lots of experience soldering, desoldering, you know, pulling chips, and you know, diagnosing problems on these retro systems. And so again, one of the most important things you can learn is when to stop and let somebody more experienced help you with the repair. And, you know, if he had gotten to a point where he got stumped, you know, maybe we could have found somebody else to chime in. But the bottom line point is, there's so many experts on the Commodore 64. It's such a beloved system, so we're so fortunate that there are so many experts out there, and I'm grateful that Dan was able to fix mine. And now I have a fully working system, and just as old as it is, it was only made about a year after the Commodore 64 came out. And so to me, it's a priceless system, and I'm glad that I get to use it and get to mess around with it and play some games on it now. So thanks for watching, everybody. If you enjoyed this video, please be sure to leave a comment. Let me know what you think. Let me know if you have great memories of C64s, or maybe if you have a collection at your house, or maybe you'd like to build a collection. Or let me know just what part you thought was most interesting in the video. Also, be sure to leave us a like and come back for more awesome retro videos. We got a lot more planned for this summer, so stay tuned, and we'll see you next time. So for now, enjoy that tech and keep it retro.